Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video, after we get a good bit of good news on the assault on benefits at the weekend, I'd like to discuss lines of misinformation potentially coming out this week. One is the media's misinformation on the nature of benefits. The other is the government's potential misinformation about mental health as well as personal independence payments. I mean, shall we just put it this way? I have questions. Maybe some of you have answers. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So yeah, after a good bit of news on dropping the proposal to freeze personal independent payments, which would have affected everyone, it's been reported that a more general plan to stop some people claiming it altogether is still very much on the cards, due to be announced tomorrow. Now, before I continue, just want to reiterate something important, because judging from some comments yesterday, didn't make the point clearly enough. This is a very serious issue, and it causes a great deal of unnecessary harm if people just make things up or draw spurious conclusions. Now, I've said for a while, Labour's behaviour in allowing so many vulnerable people who will ultimately have nothing to fear for essential income was appalling. The Treasury should be going nowhere near welfare for cuts. It was fine when the savings were going to come entirely from tackling fraud. Like, nobody defends that anyway. And for those who are saying, oh, why don't Labour go after the big tax avoiders instead? It's like, yeah, they're doing that as well. They set to work doing that straight away by hiring loads of extra tax inspectors. What do you think tax inspectors do? So it's not one or the other. But the problem with cutting benefits for people who do need them is you're basically making the argument that after 14 years of a Tory government that was desperately trying to cut any public spending that wasn't going to their rich mates, we still ended up in a situation where benefits are either too generous or too easy to claim. Now, if you're going to say that, if that's going to be your argument, you're going to have to show me some fairly robust evidence. And I have not seen any such evidence, despite actively trying to look out for it. But in challenging the government on this, it's incredibly important not to make untrue claims ourselves. Whatever the government announced tomorrow, it is clear there will be many people, including many disabled people, whose benefits will not be cut at all and will rise with inflation at least. Letting those people suffer mental health problems because you want to make a political point is not caring for the vulnerable in society. In fact, for some, there will even be extra support. The problem here is that there are also going to be many, quite frankly, very vulnerable people who are being targeted, and severely. But given the extreme anxiety these cuts will cause people, it's better to wait and see who it is going to affect, rather than letting someone who will be unaffected suffer. So don't look at the news today and think, I'm going to be facing these cuts, how will I cope? If you don't know for certain you are going to be facing them. We don't quite know who will be affected yet until they announce it tomorrow. Sadly, it does look like a lot will be. After all, these cuts were effectively ruled out as recently as a month or two ago. Rachel Reeves was saying the savings will be made entirely through tackling fraud. That's what she said. So that would suggest these cuts are a response to the worsening fiscal situation. Back in October, Rachel Reeves had £9.5 billion of fiscal headroom. Now it's minus £4.5 billion. And if you're making cuts because you have a hole in your budget, you're not going to be making those cuts for just a handful of people. And because these cuts seem very obviously linked to the fiscal situation, not because of any genuine concerns about benefits, I'm going to be highly suspicious about the justifications used. They need evidence. See, what seems to be the case, according to reports today, some people with mental health disabilities will be targeted. Now, again, don't read this as anyone who gets PIP for mental health reasons will lose it. We don't know that until the government announce something, but it does seem these people will be the main targets, though there could be others as well, from what I hear. So here is my query, and maybe someone watching has the answer. So let's say someone says to me, look, Phil, PIP is not given to people who just have disabilities. It's to people who have, as a result of their issues, higher costs than the rest of us. But there will be some people who have genuine disabilities, but the nature of them isn't alleviated with extra cash. Now, hypothetically, you go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. However, I'd have a couple of questions. The first question, which is my standard question for all such benefits arguments, is, are you really expecting me to believe that the Tories were giving hundreds of pounds a month to people who were not using that money to lower barriers to working or just living their life if unable to work? Basically, if that's true, Why didn't the Tories cut it years ago when they moved from disability living allowance to personal independence payments? And second, and this is a really genuine question to anyone watching, if you know, please put it in the comments because I can't find it. Are there any documented examples, even hypothetical examples, of people who qualify for PIP on the basis of a disability which can be shown that this extra money does not help them manage? Because I don't like the fact that various people, including ministers, are getting away with making very odd statements without the most obvious challenges. And because I wasn't sure, I mean, I asked Joe Hardy, who some of you know is a disability rights campaigner. He's up on the latest policies. He is not aware of any justification for the restrictions on eligibility. In other words, if ministers have some evidence to back up this policy that some people really shouldn't be eligible, they haven't bothered sharing it publicly. I mean, take Wes Streeting yesterday. He made the claim that mental health illnesses are overdiagnosed. Well, first of all, what's his evidence for this? I seem to have missed that. When I make a statement that seems unintuitive, and some things that are true are counterintuitive, right? I explain the basis for it. I sometimes think I do a better job of challenging myself in my own videos than supposedly professional journalists do of asking senior members of the government. And he should also have been asked, so even if that's true, what has the diagnosis got to do with anything related to PIP? Personal independence payments aren't based on diagnosis. They're based on capability. You look at the government's own webpage for PIP. It doesn't mention diagnosis, only an assessment of your ability to carry out certain specified everyday tasks. And there are two parts of the payment. The first is for daily living. The second is for mobility, if you need help getting around. Even if you have a diagnosed condition, but you don't have issues which meet these criteria, you don't get PIP anyway. So it's really the justification that needs challenging. The government clearly said that welfare savings would come entirely from tackling fraud. Now they're talking about cutting benefits from quite a lot of people. What changed? Only the fiscal situation. So they can drop the notion that they're doing this because there are too many people on benefits. They're doing it because Donald Trump shat on investor confidence. And this was the easiest way, in their view, to balance the books. And this loss of investor confidence will also make finding a job even harder for those who need employers to be flexible, because there won't be the jobs growth that we need to allow for that. But we have a government who are making extra cuts because of the fiscal situation, then a health secretary who not only makes a counterintuitive claim that doctors aren't doing their jobs without offering up any evidence, but also making a statement which, even if true, had absolutely nothing to do with the subject at hand. Mental health is one of the biggest barriers to economic growth, and yet we never take it seriously. I'd hoped Labour would change that because, after all, manifesto promises to boost mental health support for young people. Quite comprehensive. That sounds like a government that's taking it seriously. But then they're going along with this idea that, oh yeah, but there's a lot of people with mental health illnesses. They're really just making a fuss about being sad. Especially from the health secretary. That is bitterly disappointing. I noticed some of the newspapers are also trying to spread disinformation about benefits in general. You have the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph's front pages today, talking about young people just deciding to stop working and live on benefits, which is, of course, not occurring. Benefits are shit. I've lived on benefits. But I've also spent, in the interim times, a lot of my teaching career in colleges, so teaching young adults. And plenty of them were lazy. Oh, my goodness me. Nothing quite so lazy as a teenager. When it comes to their studies, but they still had part-time jobs. Why? Because people like having the money to be able to afford a decent life to go alongside their drudgery, right? Even lazy people want more money than they do want to do nothing, right? The idea that people would choose a life of benefits beyond a handful of I don't know what, is utterly ridiculous. To rely on benefits is to live in absolute poverty. People do not aspire to that. And it shows a fundamental lack of understanding of people to think that anyone really does. But I thought I'd check it out. The Daily Mail are insisting, oh, this is based on a report. Okay, what report? Oh, just a report showing how many young people are losing their jobs because of mental health problems, right? So losing your jobs is the same as choosing to live on benefits, is it? Nothing to do with the economic shit heap the Tories left us then. The article then started to allude, as I say, to mental health illnesses. So it's like, okay, so shouldn't their headlines have been poor mental health provision is causing lots of young people to be unable to hold down jobs? No, it's that young people can't be arsed working. So I'll wait until we have the policies formally presented, which I'll then discuss either tomorrow or probably more likely Wednesday, depends on the timing. In the meantime, I would just say, please don't worry until you know you're affected, because not everyone who fears they will be. And don't tell anyone they're affected until you know they are. Some people have already had mental health crises just as a result of the fear of cuts. And that is on the government. That is the government's fault. But if you tell people they'll be hit when you don't know that, you're also part of that. It's not even like it helps the people who do end up being affected just to know like a few days earlier. But if you are affected, please contact your MP urgently. The more people do that, not only the more can they make an issue of it, but some MPs will actually try to help you as well. Whatever happens tomorrow doesn't mean the end of this. It's essential that the damage of this, frankly, short-sighted policy is mitigated where possible. Also vital that these policies, unless they can be justified without lies or spurious arguments, are reversed as soon as possible. You know, this is one of those things which in 10 years' time, people are going to look back on and go, this was a hideous mistake. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.